Will modern women ever stop being whores? Will they always engage in promiscuity and nudity to get what they want? Why are women today exploiting men more than ever before? In today's series, I'm going to be explaining why women will never stop being thots. In today's culture, sex is more pervasive and glorified as it is a mere expression of empowerment and a counterculture movement of the 1960s and 70s. Women being thots goes back to the early days of urban dwellers known as pimps and hookers, and later became normalized by the turn of hip-hop. Feminists proclaims that the hip-hop industry and the sex industry degrades and exploits women. While this is partly true, in which we don't truly know what happens behind the scenes, it is still of my opinion to believe that women were more than willing to entertain and glorify a culture of promiscuity and vice. In other words, they wanted to be a part of it, whether it was through ignorance or careful consideration. Now, young girls that were persuaded into the sex industry are exempt. However, it hardly makes sense for a woman to complain about any industry if she signed up for it, especially if she's not a minor. I'm partly under the belief that even some underage women knew what they were getting themselves into. According to the yin-yang principle, the feminine is one of chaos and disorder, and masculinity brings order and stability. The feminine represents the darkness, and the masculine represents the light. Today, women are operating out of the dark feminine, which is oftentimes referred to as the Jezebel spirit. The Jezebel spirit is not limited to women, men can also possess it. The Jezebel spirit is more prevalent in women due to the way of the culture. The spirit is derivative of the Phoenician princess and queen Jezebel within Bible literature. What are some traits of the Jezebel spirit, you ask? The defining traits of the Jezebel spirit is sexual seduction and exploitation. Seduction in itself is not toxic, rather using your social intelligence and sexual power to manipulate a person or situation is. It all depends on a person's intent of whether or not their seduction is a matter of corruption. From a biblical perspective, seduction is often seen as leading someone astray from behavior that's considered right. This was illustrated in the book of Genesis by the serpent named Lucifer, who tempted Eve in the Garden of Eden. Anyways, back to the point, some women will never stop being thots because it's an inherent part of their nature. This is especially true for women in the Western world. The mere expression of horror behaviors are seen throughout various parts of the internet and society as a whole. You see these attitudes expressed through media outlets such as adult cam sites, internet porn, soft porn, seeking arrangement sites, sex work, social media, and more. Women today are not concentrated on settling for beta male types and instead are more focused on the top tier men. You can see this clearly in the African American community, as the women there aren't concerned with decent average guys at all. If there are any relationships between them, it's usually because the black women were very realistic or they couldn't compete at such a high level for men that were more optimal. However, the prettier women aren't interested in settling for decent men regardless of how much they make. If he's not considered a challenge to these women, he'll be considered invisible. It is black women that tend to be the leads of the thought culture. Black female icons such as Megan Thee Stallion, Cardi B, and more embrace a stronger sense of women's sexuality and behaviors. In fact, Megan Thee Stallion had made a hit song in 2021 called Thot Shit. Today's women would rather have a twerking and cock-sucking contest than to learn how to cook and clean. It's all about partying and getting money by any means necessary and not trying to cultivate a healthy relationship with the man to create a wholesome family. There's not enough talk at women's conventions or media hype centered around women developing themselves into being wholesome wives, or at the least trying to do the right thing. A lot of women unfortunately embrace the toxicity of thought culture and would rather deny the fact that they need change. You have the 22 convention, but that's only one organization. Anyways, let's get back to the point. Along with thought culture comes the BBL culture. A lot of women today, especially due to the rise of social media, believe in getting butt and breast implants to boost their vanity. It's all about gaining unnecessary attention to fulfill whatever void they may have. Many people say that it's because of women's insecurity of why they'll not only use beauty products, but be willing to enhance various parts of their bodies as well. While this is partly true, women are intrinsically competitive with one another. Their vanity overrides their insecurity, causing them to have the comparison syndrome. It's kind of strange of how some of the most beautiful women struggle with deep insecurities and self-worth issues. Instead of cultivating a healthy sense of self, they would rather hide behind a mask and portray themselves as someone resilient and self-independent. Today's culture promotes the idea that women should look like an ideal. For example, pageant queens, American Next Top models, IG models, BBWs, and various female celebrities. The truth is that the barometer for most of women's attractiveness is physical, but beauty is subjective in itself. Due to the sexual revolution, women honestly believe that they can employ men's short-term mating strategies and still live a healthy life. The truth is that more women are feeling more unfulfilled in their relationships, which can cause them to either cheat, dump, or divorce their partner, or sabotage the relationship due to their own insecurities, indecisiveness, or toxic nature. In this day and time, women will never fully be satisfied with one man unless he represents a fantasy. As long as we live in a gynocentric social order, women will never stop engaging in whore behaviors and will always seek men for mere leisure and entertainment. Women today are no longer building with decent men and instead waiting for them to have their lives in order to at least give them a chance. Until then, next time.